Hmm. Welcome, my dear friends. Dear friend, welcome back to the Anxious Love Coach podcast. I'm so happy to have you here today. Today's episode, I'm bringing on my co-coach, Sheridan. And maybe some of you guys are old. You've been listening to this podcast for a while. Maybe some of you guys are new. In either case, if you are in my world, you know Sheridan. Sheridan used to be one of my very first clients before I even created Anxious Love Coach. And I was just kind of testing this philosophy to see if it could be of service to people, because Anxious Love Coach really started as a fashion project that ended up serving so many. And Sheridan is a walking testament to this work. And when I needed help, I shamelessly brought her on. And she has been so fundamental to Anxious Love Coach's growth and this solidification of our philosophy. So I'm so glad that you're here. And today we'll be talking about how grief often hides under the experience of relationship anxiety. I actually think we're right around the holidays. This is a great topic. Believe it or not, the holidays have a lot of grief embedded into them. It's a time of transition and change and reflection. So very happy to bring Sheridan on today. Sheridan is a co-coach for Anxious Love Coach. She's got her own one-on-one practice. She helps me run my group programs. And if you follow me on Instagram at Anxious Love Coach, you'll see she comes on very often during the weekends when I am resting. So very happy to have you on today. Welcome back. How are you?
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be back. I just had this thought. I had a memory while you were speaking of myself last week or 2 weeks ago saying, this December, I'm not going to do grief. I'm not grieving this December because I've grieved a lot these last few years during December. And I just realized kind of the irony that we're filming a podcast on grief and there's been a lot of grief in my December, but that's good and that's okay. And we have space for it. But the irony is there.
Yeah. It's I've definitely noticed a lot coming up for me, and it usually hides behind obsessive, anxious thinking. And then when I get really still and I drop into my body and my sensations, and I'm thinking, what is really here? The floodgates often come running. So whoosh. Yeah. So what about the holidays has triggered grief for you in the past?
In the past, I think that, yeah, there have been kind of two phases. The first was definitely the grief of, and I kind of pretended that it didn't exist. And that's why I think it took so many years for me to actually process it, because I kept kind of just pushing it away. And it's really easy during December to just keep really busy and just keep going. And there was a large part of my adult life where I actually had to really grieve the fact that I was never going to have a Christmas like the one that I had when I was a child. And now I had to be the adult.
Holidays as an adult kind of sucks.
Not as fun. Definitely not as fun.
It's different.
Yeah. And it's like, it was like this realization that I was probably never going to feel that like specific type of, it's Christmas.
The magic of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I had to be very intentional about how to create my own magic, but I didn't know that then. And it was a grief. And I wasn't able to pinpoint it until maybe a couple of years in. I was like, oh yeah, I'm really sad about this. That really sucks. Really sucks.
Yeah. And I know we're just starting at this, but I feel like we're diving right in already.
Yeah.
The grief doesn't really, what's the word I'm looking for? It really doesn't leave any stone unturned. Everybody's affected by it. It's merciless in the sense that you're not going to get through this life without it. And you might be grieving that you're never going to get like this magical Christmas again. And there might be other people who are listening who never had a magical Christmas at all. And so they're grieving a childhood they never got at all. So it's like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You're going to experience grief. But we also want to empower you that there are so many gifts embedded in grief. And we're hopeful that by listening to our episode today, We can teach you how really grief hides under these obsessive thoughts, how grief often hides under controlling, nitpicking behaviors. And if you're able to really tune into it, you'll be kind of dropped into a surrendering kind of acceptance. And there is so much gratitude and light and bliss on the other side of that, because you really can't make space for gratitude and enjoyment of what is without making space for your grief too.
And one will increase the other. So when we know how to manage one, when we know how to manage the depth of the grief and we can sit with it, we also get a lot better and we increase our capacity to sit with all of the goodness that is in life. And we find our own little magic on a Tuesday morning. And It's really cool.
Yes, yes. So we are definitely going to talk about the experience of relationship anxiety today. I also want to tie in a little bit of holiday grief, which if you're listening to this in December or in January, I think just the new year is a time, it's winter time. It's kind of a time of death, a lot of times of new beginnings. So really grief is going to be around the corner for the next like 3-4 months. So enjoy. This will apply to you if you're listening anytime during those months. And we're hopeful that we can shine light on spaces inside that need attention, that are maybe hiding underneath your experience of holiday anxiety or relationship anxiety. But before we do that, maybe we can talk. I'm gonna tell people. Sheridan works for me, but she also has her own business with alopecia. And when she came on, she was. I'm not going to speak for your story. I'll have you do it too, obviously. But I think Sheridan is really exquisitely qualified to speak on grief, and she's actually transferred a lot of this language towards relationship anxiety also. But Sheridan and I were talking yesterday, you guys, and we were talking about like the best ways to describe the experience of grief. And I had this like I was explaining it like an onion, and Sheridan had her own way. But let's start talking about like what grief kind of looks like. Can you share your thoughts? Because I really liked how you put it.
Yeah. Okay. So it's funny because maybe I didn't share this here, but like the one that we were speaking about yesterday is actually one that I've applied to the alopecia and hair loss and relationship anxiety, but it came to me because I don't know how many, like we haven't spoken about this a lot, but I have spoken about it a little bit because my ex passed away a couple of years ago. And that's like the big grief. And it reminded me that there are some griefs that feel like they're supposed to get smaller, but they don't always get smaller, whether that is of a parent or a pet or a life that you never had. And this analogy really helped me understand and stop judging myself or expecting it to be different. I expected that at some point this grief would change. And this analogy helped me understand that it may not, but what will change is me. And it's this analogy that grief is like a bouncy ball inside of a jar. And the bouncy ball may never change size, but you are the jar and you will get bigger. And as you get bigger and as you have more capacity, you will find all of this new space inside of your jar. And you can put whatever you want in your jar. And the grief will just be a bouncy ball inside of the jar instead of a bouncy ball taking up the entire jar. Mm-hmm. And that's what processing does.
Yeah. And it's like every time the ball hits the side of the jar is when it really hits you, literally. Like it hurts and the tears come. But as the jar gets bigger, it hits the sides of the jar less and less frequently, I suppose, but it's still there. And I really liked that you described that this is really about expanding your capacity to feel. This is not about getting rid of an emotion, and so much of what we teach our clients, and we actually have a group program coming up called Upward Spiral in Love, starting in February. We'll talk about that at the very end today. But one of our core principles at Anxious Love Coach is learning to expand your capacity to feel everything so that you're not in resistance to feeling. Because so much of anxiety is a resistance to feeling. I shouldn't be feeling this way. I should be over this by now. This shouldn't be happening. If I were more evolved or spiritual or whatever, more strong, I wouldn't be feeling this way. And really, we're saying, no, you can feel all the things as intensely as you feel them. What's different is how big is your capacity? Do you have enough space inside? I don't literally mean air. It's like kind of a metaphorical thing. How expansive do you feel in your life that you can hold all these big emotions inside? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And I like the metaphor that you also was talking about.
I called it an onion that's in your pocket. And at first it's really bulky. And then you peel back layers and layers, and gradually it turns into a shallot. But little shallot. But actually, I think yours is more accurate because it never really disappears.
Yeah.
But there are waves and layers to grief. And a lot of our clients, we teach them how to emotionally process. And sometimes I think they get frustrated. This is the judge inside, right? I shouldn't be feeling this way. Sometimes they get frustrated because they'll have this big release, this big emotional catharsis. And then 6 months later, they run into this seemingly same exact pain. And they're like, I thought I processed this. What the fuck? And we say, you're not at square one, even if you feel like you are, because between the last time you processed this and you processing it now, you have acquired so much wisdom and experience. You have expanded your capacity even more. So now you're being invited to feel this exact same feeling again, but with more capacity, with more wisdom. And now you can take that next layer of wisdom that you didn't have the space to receive the last time you processed this seemingly exact same thing. So I say this to kind of reveal to you that I use the word reveal, but it's a revealing of more layers, more wisdom, more knowledge, more gratitude, because you can find that really joy and acceptance through your pain,
Yeah. And the layers that the onion has, or the layers that your emotions have, or your grief has, so many times there is a protective wrapping around it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Don't you dare touch my grief. Don't go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think how would you describe the protective wrapping? What does that manifest as?
In terms of thoughts or body, or sorry, if you're on YouTube, I'm all blurry, but
so if I'm experiencing a layer of protective wrapping, what would that look like in my experience?
It might be, so the way my first thought of how this might manifest is if someone pokes an insecurity that you have, you might attack them in response or try to control them. I see controlling behaviors covering up grief all the time. It's like, rather than, let's just say, oh, Preston picked up his wet towel off the floor this morning. I was going to use the wet towel analogy. Because this morning
we mark this date because
what
episode is this?
It's happened, you guys. It happened. No, because this morning I went to shower while Preston was still in bed. And I walked in and I was like, there's a wet towel on the floor. And I stomped to myself and then walked out because I didn't want to look at it. And as I sat down to do the podcast, I just realized it's gone. I'm going to thank him for that. So it's happening, you guys. The wet towels are magically disappearing. But in the past, if I were to, it's like the wet towel doesn't seem like it has anything to do with grief, does it? But it can, because rather, let's say it brings up a feeling in me, rather than grieving the fact that my fantasy partner doesn't exist, god damn it, rather than grieving my fantasy partner that never ever leaves a wet towel on the floor and never ever has a pimple on their nose and never ever has bad breath, rather than allowing myself to grieve the fantasy life that I thought I was going to get in childhood, I make my partner responsible for how I feel, and I try to change him into making sure I never feel a certain way. So that's obviously like kind of a stretch of an example, but I often see people resist difficult emotions by controlling their circumstances around them. Was that kind of what you had in mind, or do you have something else?
That's exactly what I had in mind. And I don't think it's a stretch of an emotion of a situation at all.
Yes,
I think
so
it's
too.
very real.
Yeah.
It is really real. Like, there are so many times where we'll want or nitpick at a certain thing or find ourselves being like, oh, why is he like this? Why can't he just do X, Y, Z? Why do I have to manage this? Why do I have to control this? Why have I gone and chose a partner like this? What does this mean about us? What does this mean about him? What does this mean about me? But if we go underneath that protective layer of trying to find what this means or trying to change the reality, which is maybe your partner doesn't do the dishes as much as you want. If you go underneath that, so many times you will find that you're grieving something. And for me recently, this was like, I was getting really frustrated because my partner didn't help with the Thanksgiving dinner, and that frustrated me. And then I was like, oh, he didn't do the dishes. And then you keep seeing all these things. And then I was like, oh, I really miss my mom. I miss my mom doing things for me.
Wow. How did you arrive at that?
It took a little while, to be completely honest, but I just sat with it. I just was like, I got a little bit fed up with myself. And I was like, I'm done with this. This is enough of these thoughts. And I just sat on the toilet for a little bit too long.
That's the best place, isn't it?
I just had this like moment. I sat on the toilet and I was like, I'm still anxious about this. That's enough. And I was like, that's it. I'm not doing this anymore. What else is here? And as I was sitting on the toilet, I noticed that I was really sad. And I think that we have been doing this work for long enough, and we've practiced it enough, and I've guided clients through it enough that I was able to instantaneously ask myself, where is this sadness coming from? When was the first time I felt this sadness? And then I realized it was like a long time ago when my mom wasn't around. It was 10 years ago when I wanted my mom to be around and she wasn't. And then I thought, oh, what do I really want? And I just wanted her to make me a sandwich. I was like, oh, that's what this is.
I feel a literal ache in my heart for you. I think that is so relatable. Yeah. And so really this points to when you're having anxiety about your relationship, if you take, I will say this over and over and over, if you take the thoughts, which always sound the same, don't they? They're like, why are you so bad? Like they always sound exactly the same. And if you take them at face value, it'll wreak destruction in every aspect of your life. Those thoughts will get targeted at you too, because the judge judges anything, including you, including your partner, including people on the internet. And if you take it at face value, it's just going to cause destruction. But if you are willing to have the humility, and it is humility, because you have to be willing to question the thoughts at face value, that they're really about what they say they're about. You know, it doesn't seem like it's about your mom at face value. It seems like it's about your partner not helping at Thanksgiving and he's a shitty person and you're stupid for being with him. But if we dig a little deeper, it's a hunger for a support that maybe you never got.
Yeah.
And that realization doesn't even mean that you had necessarily a bad childhood or a bad parent or anything like that. It's just an unmet need, a hunger that is actually human to have. Right?
Even if you did get all of it, you still, like, it's normal to still want that stuff. It's normal to, especially, I think this happens a lot of the time or this could just be me projecting, who knows, but where we have all these needs, right? And we're like, oh, I want everything. I want to be the queen of the universe. But I don't want any responsibility, but I want everyone to bring me flowers on Tuesdays, and they have to be a specific type of flower, and I want this specific salad, and I want all the things. All the things. And the part of us that wants to repress our desire to just have all of our needs filled and have everyone basically live for us, because I'm the center of my universe, you are the center of your universe. That is just the way that it is. No one thinks about themselves more than you think about yourself. Does that make sense? Yeah. No one thinks about me more than I think about me. So can we take a moment to just be like, yeah, it's okay to want all of the things, including the things that you don't foresee yourself having in the future?
Yes. Oh my God. I mean, we could do a whole podcast just on desire, but I actually had a conversation with a one-on-one client on this exact thing this week, where she and I were relating because we have Russian moms. And 50 years ago, Russia was not the best place to be. And there was a lot of scarcity. And it did not matter if you had a desire. They couldn't like just sit and meditate and like manifest shit in the Soviet Union unless like you knew how to get around. But there's a time when having an abundance mindset would actually cause you pain, because you are so powerless in that society. And this is still true for people today, even in our society today. But if you are completely powerless, it doesn't matter how abundant your mindset is. In fact, having an abundance mindset in a scarce environment will actually cause you a lot of pain and disappointment. So it's just easier to not desire. But then we enter a consumer world where you can order something on Amazon and get it in 2 days. You can get whatever you want pretty much, or you're at least allowed to desire. And so for me, it's been a grieving a life, that I've learned early on in my life, don't want things. It'll just put pain on everybody. Please don't desire. And I've had to unlearn that desiring is not shameful. It's not dangerous. And I can simultaneously desire and not be attached to. And sometimes I still am attached. And to the degree that I'm attached to something is the degree to which I love. And the degree to which I love is the degree to which I might get disappointed and grieve. And disappointment is in that same like category as grief. And I think a lot of us are really resistant to disappointment because we think that if we are disappointed, we had an expectation that didn't get met. We think we did something wrong.
Yes. And I have to take this moment to say that the degree you said, to the degree to which I love is the degree to which I grieve. And I just want to highlight that it also works the other way around. So if you can grieve something, you create more space for love.
Yes. Ding, ding, ding. They go ding, together. Ding. They go together. So let's talk in terms of relationship anxiety. Let's say you were in the honeymoon phase, and all of a sudden, one day you wake up and you look over at your partner and you're like, oh my God, I don't love them right now. Like their breath stinks and their mouth is hanging open and there's like a booger hanging out of their nose. Like, ew. And then you freak the fuck out. Thinking, it's over. I don't love them anymore. Oh. And a lot of us have heard about the 5 stages of grief. I wrote them down right here. Hold on, I pulled this up on my computer. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And usually when we think about grief, we think about the loss of a person or a loss of a loved one or a loss of a job or a state of our health. But we often don't realize that when you move out of the honeymoon phase, there is a very real stage of loss, a real sense of loss. And you will go through all the same stages, even if you don't break up. Because when you move out of the honeymoon phase, by definition, that means something is changing. You're now at a fork in the road. Something inside me is changing. the relationship is changing. Maybe my partner is changing. Maybe they're not the same person that you met. And that puts you at a choice point of, what do I want to do with this new information? And by definition, when you make a choice, you didn't make another. And so there's a very real loss in that. And you might be in denial at first, and you'll be like pretending we're still in the honeymoon phase when we're like not. Now we're moving into the nitty gritty. And then you find yourself maybe getting angry with them for not doing the things that they used to do for you. And now you're in the bargaining stage saying, if he were to just be this way, I wouldn't have to feel this, that. If you would just that. This is where we go into nitpicking. The anxiety, if it gets to be really intense and you're stuck in this belief that this is wrong, you might find yourself feeling really futile about it, and you can drop into a state of depression. And then when you come work with us and we say, it's all normal, just keep coming, just keep showing up, it's all beautiful. Obviously, there's nuance to that statement. Don't take it too literally. It's different for each person. As long as you trust yourself, it's okay. But eventually you can move into a state of acceptance and see the very real gifts that are available here. I mean, my partner and I have been together for 10 years now, and we're just rediscovering ourselves sexually together for the first time. It's a totally different experience. I don't know how to talk about it right now because we're still figuring it out, but like new shit's happening in our relationship. And I don't think I could have experienced that level of trust and knowing of one another in year 1 and 2. Like there had to be 10 years of bullshit for us to get to this level. And every day is a new relationship. So there is grief. Anyway, that was my little rant.
Yeah. It's also like, there's the grief of the honeymoon phase. There's the grief of that excitement when you first move in and go grocery shopping together. And then there's the grief.
So perfect.
I know, right? I want that. I'll recreate it. And then there's the grief of who that person was, or even like when they have a job. Speaking about this with a one-on-one client, when they have a job and they are a version of themselves, and you're like, yeah, I like that. And then their job changes and they are a different version of themselves. And maybe you like that one as well, but it's a little bit different. We have to grieve them. And then we have to grieve as well ourselves as we change, and our lifestyle as that changes. And it's normal and okay for layers and cycles of grief to kind of stack onto each other, and for your emotions to become a little bit of a bundled mess, and for then that to lead to anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Especially if the grief is not unmanageable. The feeling that makes us drop out of because when you're grieving, you're actually in a, like when you're crying, you're actually moving into a state of acceptance. Acceptance is right around the corner. In fact, you can be crying and simultaneously be in acceptance of it, which is really cool. But I remember, you're so right, Sheridan. Like just a couple weeks ago, Preston started building a new business. Like we just spent a year traveling, and he was working for Anxious Love Coach. And we came back and he's like, yeah, I probably should start something of my own now. And I was like, I wish I could retire you, honey, but I can't. Not yet. Like I'm not there yet. So he started like investing in a course. He invested in a course, and now he's like a full-time job studying for this like investing thing that he's working on. And I'm not seeing him as often. And I started noticing myself getting snippy and like, I miss you. And I started noticing him getting snippy too. And one night we were talking and we realized we were sad that our digital nomad life was over, even though there were aspects of it I really hated. Like he was grieving that life of just having no responsibilities really. And I was grieving having him all to myself all the time. And we don't see how that hides underneath our fear of what's going to happen. They seem so unrelated. And yet I really like Cheryl Paul's question of when you're in these like anxious thoughts that seem to have no answer to them. There's fundamentally unanswerable questions of, am I making the right choice? Like, I like her question of, what is this thought or this thought loop protecting me from feeling? And sometimes for me, that question's hard because I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel like I'm protecting. But another question is like, what seems really inconvenient to feel right now? Because that will tell you where your resistance is. Why do you believe that you can't be in this situation feeling this way? Because that would mean you're doing something wrong. Oh, I'm with my partner who I love, but I hate them right now. That seems
Very
like an
inconvenient.
inconvenient feeling. So,
Yeah.
and that's why we talk about creating space and expanding your capacity to feel multiple things at once. It's like, I can love my partner and want to kill them right now. They can both be true. They don't cancel each other out, but
Yeah.
seemingly inconvenient. And it'll just tell you where your beliefs are rigid about what a relationship should look like and feel like.
Yeah. I want to also say, like, that's a skill to move through those. It's a skill that, just like every other skill, just like making sourdough bread or risotto or learning how to use TikTok, the skill of being able to understand, decipher, and like poke holes in your thoughts, it's one that you learn and you practice. Like, Natalie and I weren't born with these questions. We didn't even just read one book and start applying that to everyday life. Just like, click, done, tick that off the list. It's literally a practice, and the more that you practice it and the more that you have the support in line to kind of pull you back into it, and the reminder to pull you back into it, the easier it gets. And then it does become second nature, and you can do it in moments that are like a little bit more charged or a little bit more emotional, or a little bit like you may feel like higher anxiety. But it's a practice, and you have to keep showing up for it consistently so that you can get better at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. It was not second nature at first. It was like, I take every thought at face value. And over time, and I think I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because it kind of emphasizes that we're not done either. We're not anxiety free. Like, it's just now when we experience it, we have enough space inside to be able to lean back and see what it's about. And, part of it is having the space inside, but part of it too is having tools. And that's why, like, when we get new clients that want to come into our programs, they're like, will you fix me? And it's like, I won't fix you. I'm just going to teach you a bunch of tools, and you can try them and see how they work for you. It just so happens that these tools just happen to work really well for a lot of people. Mindfulness, being able to dig under your thoughts, knowing what questions to ask yourself, knowing how to pause, knowing how to create space. Do you have enough tolerance for discomfort? Do you feel supported in this? Like, do you know how to express your emotions? Let's say you tap into grief. Do you even know what to do with it? Maybe
So
someone never.
what's
What
your
to do with
go-to?
it?
Because you have a really wonderful, I really like the way that I really like your practice around expressing emotions. And I really like the way that you describe it and the way that you teach it. And I think that you have a good way of, sharing that. So what's your go-to? What do we do when we have grief?
Okay. Well, I'm actually going to say this is what we do when we feel any big emotion. But obviously the first step is identifying it or them. Sometimes there's several emotions, and we do this in our programs. And I'm so excited about Upward Spiral into Love, because it's possible for it to be a huge group. Like, we're like, we would really like to have a large group, because it actually is such a personal, primal experience. It doesn't have to be super, like, it can be done in a group on a really large scale, which is super exciting. I want to do this in person someday. But like, when you start peeling back the layers of anxiety and being like, where is my resistance to feeling? What do I not want to feel, and why? Well, that'll tell you a little bit about your story and your beliefs and what you've learned. And eventually, if you can knock on the door of this big emotion, or rather, it's not even that you're knocking on the door of the emotion, it's actually knocking on you.
On your door, yeah.
It's knocking on your door. So it's are you willing to open the door to let it in? That's really what it is. Because the way I kind of teach it, and we have this phenomenal exercise that we teach called the awareness exercise in all our programs. It has nothing to do with relationships, anxiety particularly, but it's your relationship to your emotional internal experience. And kind of the concept that we share is that we all have what's called an emotional queue, and a certain list of emotions that needs to be felt in that particular order. You don't know what it is. It's just stuff that needs to be felt. And generally, the first thing we feel is the resistance to the emotion. It shows up as anxiety. That I can't feel this right now. I'm going to get in trouble, or it's going to mean I'm going to have to break up, or da 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 da. But if we can, the first step is really to make sure that you have a safe space, because and that's why if you have resistance, speak to it, because a lot of times it'll tell you that you're not in a safe space. Like if you're angry at your boss and you're in a meeting, that's probably not the place to express your anger. You know, I say be authentic, but not always, please. Like there's a reason you have this ability to hide your emotions. It's because it's actually useful and you should use it sometimes. Don't be totally authentic all the time. Have safe spaces to dump. So whether that's a FaceTime call with someone you trust. I really like going to my mom's house because my mom and my stepdad are teachers, and so they leave the house every morning. So sometimes I drive there in the morning, and I know that no one's going to be home, no one's going to be judging me, and I can throw a little tantrum. So the first step is really to have a safe space, and then open it up. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming to take it all in at once. So you can take it in little bite-sized pieces, right? And then start to like do what you need to get in your body and feel. For me, I love a lot of Osho dynamic meditations. Those are really phenomenal. We do them with our clients. Yoga is wonderful, although yoga can be very controlled. So there's that aspect of it. If you can make it kind of a yoga where you can lash out, great.
You can start with a yoga flow and then just let yourself do whatever the hell you want.
Exactly. But I think, yeah. But start with some kind of a cadence, something that has a structure to it, something that's consistent, because that's going to create a feeling of safety in the body. So breath, or running, jumping jacks, something that's kind of consistent. I like tribal music or something that has a beat. Or I have a list, I have a folder on Spotify of different playlists for different emotions. There's a playlist called pissed. There's a playlist called devastated. There's a playlist called disappointed, bummed, annoyed, fuck you. There's all these different flavors of emotions. And I was raised in a musical family, so I'm very sensitive to the emotions in a song. When I listen to a song, I can be like, oh, this is whimsical, and then I can put that into my whimsical playlist. And so now whenever I feel a certain emotion that needs permission to move through, I can put those songs on. And obviously I could talk about processing emotions for 8 hours, so I'm going to kind of leave it at that. But this is the work that we do with our clients. It's like, okay, how do we get you to feel safe enough to open up the door? That's how, you got to create your safe container first. Our group program, we're actually calling it a cocoon for a reason. It's the 6-month container. There's a start and an end. There's certain dates, time and place. We show up, we do the work, and then you exit the cocoon with all this knowledge, all these tools, and hopefully friendships and relationships and people that you can process with. But that is pretty much it. If you can just create a safe space and then activate your emotion and follow the impulse that moves through you. That's really it.
And stay with it. Notice if your thoughts will want to take you out of it because it's uncomfortable.
True. Yeah.
Notice that and stick with it.
Yeah. I'm being pulled out of my body again.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to look at my phone. What?
Oh, yeah, exactly. I'm going to check Instagram, get that little dopamine release so I don't have to feel. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, before you can feel emotions, you really have to start with the level of sensation. This is why we're very passionate about meditation tools like Anapana and Vipassana. Once you are able to feel that, then you can move into emotional stuff. But at first, you have to really reduce it down to sensation in order to make it feel safe, because otherwise you can start analyzing it all, and it's a lot. So this is awesome. there's a couple, so I wrote this down on my notes for today. There's a couple songs I really like if you want help tuning into your grief. I really like You Can't Rush Your Healing by Trevor Hall. And I also really like Bergs by Mount Wolf, Burgs. Always gets me the tears flowing and remembering why I'm alive. Like it's the grief is such a grief actually indicates a death of something. Something died. And when you are close to death, you are close to rebirth and life too. And it can be a very meaningful emotion if you let yourself feel it. Because if you're not willing to feel grief, you're not really feeling the beautiful meanings in life. It's one of the most cathartic, incredible emotions you can feel, but it is a big one, and you do want to feel supported through it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It's so beautiful. I also want to touch on disappointment. I know I'm kind of like hogging this conversation today, so
I'm just listening. I just agree with you.
Yeah, and also, like, disappointment is right around the same flavor of grief. And if you're ever wondering, like, what disappointments you're unwilling to feel, you can ask yourself this question: what do I wish happened that didn't, or what happened that I wish didn't happen? And you can even do this all the time. I actually there's a beautiful, I think she's a psychologist on Instagram called Dr. Becky at Good Inside. Do you know her?
Yeah.
Oh my
She
God.
has the really wonderful, she has parent advice sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She does
really
parenting
good.
and she does parenting advice. I already feel like I'm going to be a perfect parent by the time I have kids because I've been
I have the right Instagram accounts.
Yeah, I'm following the right Instagram, so that means I'm perfect. Yeah. This is a joke for those of you wondering. But I really like her account because it's actually teaching me how to speak to myself. And when something kind of happens that catches me off guard, I now say to myself, oh, you didn't want that to happen. You weren't expecting that. And it's like I can just be like, oh, this is disappointment. Oh, and disappointment has, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can literally see when I feel disappointment, what my body does. It's like a dropping of an exhale. It's like, oh, it's that energy. And you can say to yourself, oh, you didn't want that to happen. And notice what impulse arises in your body when you say that to yourself. Oh, you didn't want that to happen.
Because it's like the gateway. Because we were talking the other day, you and I, about shame and how disgust is kind of like the gateway into shame.
Oh yeah.
And so disappointment is almost like the gateway into grief. And I don't know about you or anyone who's listening, but I know that a lot of people who are in my life personally have a little bit of a there's a lot of resistance with disappointment. We want to avoid disappointment. You want to avoid disappointing yourself. You want to avoid disappointing your coworkers. You want to avoid disappointing your partner. You want to avoid disappointing your family. We want to avoid disappointment. And when somebody says to you, oh yeah, I was a little bit disappointed about that, notice what your reaction is. Is it to attack them, to avoid their feeling? Is it to disassociate? Is it to shut down? To defend? Yeah. Like, what is, and this can kind of give you a little bit of a meter to noticing what your relationship is with grief. Because what is your relationship with disappointment? Are you comfortable with disappointment in others, in yourself, or are you actively avoiding it whenever you are given the opportunity to confront it? And if you can just practice like hugging the disappointment or smiling at the disappointment instead of going into your other reactions, then that's one way of like expanding your capacity to work with grief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a stretching that happens. It's like at first you can notice just in like kind of the OCD community and also just humans at large, but we have a whole, I need to do a whole podcast on like, are you disordered or are you human? It's a spectrum. But if you can't even tolerate the like micro disappointments, how are you going to be able to tolerate like the really big ones, like moving out of the honeymoon phase or someone dying. And I'm not saying that those are tolerable emotions, are really, really painful, but a lot of people today can't even handle a momentary damn without picking up their phone and distracting themselves from it. And so that disappointment accumulates and gets added to your emotional queue. And eventually you're going to have to process it, because we only have so much space to be able to postpone emotions before they start leaking into our persona and how we behave and interact with the world.
And that's when we end up nitpicking and attacking people on the internet, and we end up in anxiety. We end up wondering,
Yes.
Is this relationship the right one? What do I need to do in this relationship to avoid the disappointment that's inside of me?
Yes. Yes. And whether you choose, some people will listen to this and they'll feel empowered to actually leave a relationship that's not serving them. And the work is the same. It's really, this isn't never break up with your partner coach. Like, this is just trust yourself in relationship to yourself and to others. And whether your relationship changes and as a result you decide to stay or break up, grief is around the corner, change is around the corner, disappointment is around the corner. You didn't get into the relationship expecting it to end. If that was the experience for you, like, you weren't expecting that. And make space for the emotions that come up as a result.
And acceptance is around the corner.
Acceptance is around the corner, and it'll happen. Acceptance happens also in layers, kind of like grief.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I can't accept that I'm not attracted to my partner, right? Or maybe I can't accept that I'm not, maybe I can't accept that I'm not attracted to my partner right now, but maybe I can accept that I don't like his nose right now.
And you can also practice accepting that you can't accept something.
Yes.
Instead of resisting that you can't
accept
like
meta.
it. That's like meta. Change that.
So meta, like, back up. Maybe you can accept that you can't accept it.
Yeah. I can't accept that, and I accept that.
Yeah. Because really it's about learning to accept yourself wherever you are, in whatever capacity. And it, by the way, acceptance does not mean liking it. Acceptance is like, I did an episode with Lucy Lamp, and she was like, acceptance is like, this is a hand. It's not like, for those of you listening, I'm holding up my hand on the video. This is a hand. It's not a duck flipper. It's a hand. I don't have to like that it's not a duck flipper, but I acknowledge that it's a hand and it has 5 fingers and fingernails. That's all acceptance is.
I find I'm sad that you don't have a duck flipper right now. Like, inside
Sheridan
of me
is
right
grieving.
now, I'm grieving that.
You weren't expecting that. You were expecting me to hold up a duck flipper.
I was hoping for it.
I'll surprise you one day. Yummy. Such a good series. I feel very blessed that you're on today. This is awesome. When Sheridan and I get together, it's always just so good because we work with the same people. And if you're here and you've been listening to us talk about upward spiral in love and you are interested, we'll spend a few minutes talking about it because enrollment is open. And we would love to tell you about it. But if you're done and you're like, I just want to listen to the podcast, thanks, I love you, I'm not interested in joining a program right now, then thank you for listening. Have a great day. Peace out. And then if you do want to stay around for a few minutes while we talk about upward spiral, then stick around.
Bye, everyone leaving. We love you.
Bye, everyone leaving. Yeah, so we would love to invite you. We are actually taking on women right now that would like to join us in our group program. We start on February 16th and we actually go for 6 months, which is so exciting. I hope that I didn't just blow up my microphone. I'm so excited because usually our programs have been a lot shorter, like 10 to 12 weeks, which is really nice. But the thing that I love about a 6 month is that it gives you time for real life to happen. It gives you time for transitions to happen. It gives you time to get in a huge fight and actually bring that conflict to the table in the program. It gives you time for holidays to happen and for new anxieties and transitions. If you are in a relationship, your relationship will change during those 6 months. However, it changes regardless of whether you're with us or not. And so we want to support you through transitions that happen in your relationship. And if you're not in a partnership, so much of this work is inner work based, self-focused based. So don't worry about if you're not in a relationship. This program is for people who identify as women. The main reason for that is because we tend to partner you guys up with other people in the program to do emotional processing, and women tend to feel safest doing emotional processing with other women. We will have some kind of program soon available for men, but this is all we have for now. So we're really excited. Right now, the program is $14.99 US dollars. That's $1,499, not $15. Or we have a payment plan on our website. You can check it out, anxiouslovecoach.com, Upward Spiral into Love. And right now, it's at that price, but starting in January, we are going to be increasing the price. So if you want to join in, you can register right on our website. We're not doing assessments, but if you do have any inquiries about it, or you want to just make sure that this is a good option for you, feel free to DM us on Instagram or shoot us an email. Because this is kind of an open group, we're anticipating a large group. We're not doing assessments, but we do want to connect with you beforehand if you feel like you need a little bit help kind of qualifying yourself. But if you're in a relationship with a wonderful person and you just kind of have one foot out the door and you're always questioning if you love our content, I promise it's more of the same and a lot more. It's not just talking about relationship anxiety. We're actually giving you the tools and holding the container for you to do the work in a long, consistent way. So that is really exciting. Do you have anything that you want to share? I know you're excited about this too, Sheridan. So tell me about your side.
I'm so excited. One thing, the first thought that I'm having right now is that it is more of the same and it's extra, because something that has been really fun for us and has been kind of a little bit of a passion and a personal little injection that we have enjoyed giving is working a lot with bringing. Yes, there is an element of accepting that your relationship is different. And yes, there's also things that you can do to bring things into your relationship that you want, like recreating the magic of going grocery shopping for the first time. And they're tools that Natalie and I use every single day so that we can feel, I think, number one, honestly, I think, and I don't want to speak for us both, but I think that there are tools that we use every single day that help us to stay in love with life. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily about you being in a partnership and trying to make your relationship look a certain way. It's more like, how can I make my life look the way that I want it? How can I just enjoy this a little bit more? What is here that feels really good that I want more of? And how can I bring more of that in? And if you are in a partnership, how can I invite and my partner to bring more love and safety, security, and pick up the towel without nitpicking? And how can we make sure that it sounds like our 10th year and we're having the best sex of our life?
Yeah, because it is possible. It is possible. Some of the best sex I've ever had has been in year 10.
Yeah. So obviously that's not stuff that we're going to be talking about on Instagram.
No.
We're pretty open, but not that open. And it's not the container to do that either. It's also placed at the end of the program because it's about taking you from, if you're experiencing anxiety at the moment, or you're experiencing some type of doubt regarding yourself and relationships, whether you're in partnership or not. What we're doing in Upward Spiral is we're kind of taking you on the journey that we've been on, which is taking you from like doubt, anxiety, one foot out the door, to feeling really confident in yourself and really like on fire.
Yeah.
And turned on.
Totally. Because I think, the topic of grief is kind of heavy. And when you're experiencing anxiety, all you can think about is like, I just don't want to feel anxiety anymore. And that's your goal. But I promise you that once you're not feeling anxiety, most of the time, obviously, sometimes you still do, just like you get headaches sometimes, but it's more of a sign that something's off than I'm just an anxious person. But eventually you're a lot more calm, you're a lot more grounded. And from then we want to kind of take you into like a third stage. There's a first stage of being totally erratic and anxious. And then there's like the second stage of like, I'm calm, I'm peaceful, I trust myself. But I don't want you to just kind of be at acceptance of like your relationship is kind of meh sometimes. Like, I want you to know what to do to make it spicy. And that is kind of like Sheridan was saying, you guys, that is learning the art of seduction, not just in relationship, but towards yourself and towards life. We actually kind of are learning how to use the art of seduction in our sales process. It's like, how do we be flirty with you guys? How do we have fun? And like Sheridan said, how do I learn how to use these different aspects of myself, these different energies, rather than trying to control or force my partner to pick up the towel without me asking? How do I inspire and flirt him into doing that? How do I use my sensual, creative, ridiculously dramatic side to make him naturally want to treat me a certain way? And that is art, that is play. How do you use your emotions in a safe way that makes you a really interesting, fun person? I am way more expressive than I've ever been in my relationship. My partner has become way more expressive. He throws little tantrums all the time, stomping his feet when he gets disappointed. And it just makes the relationship a fuck ton more fun. We have our inner children are running the show in this relationship. And it's so playful. So it's not just about not having anxiety, you guys. It's so much more than that. When you learn how to flirt with life, and become this like bad bitch of a human, your relationship is going to do way better. So that's kind of why we call it upward spiral, because there's the downward spiral of overthinking and obsessing and nitpicking. And then eventually you can stop it and get to neutral. But we want to teach you how to enter that upward vortex of like, the better it gets, the better it gets, the better it gets, the better it gets. And your relationship progress compounds over time. Does that mean Preston and I never have a fight? Does that mean we never enter a stalemate of a dynamic? No, it happens all the time. But the point is, we know how to pull ourselves out of it. And the latency, how long it takes to recover, is a lot faster. And the forgiveness is a lot faster. And we want to teach you how to do that based on our personal experience. So, and it's just super fun to get to know yourself on this deep level too. So that's all I got.
Get to know the other women.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so cool when that's true. It's so true. I mean, we have Relationship Anxiety Alchemists right now, which is our current group program. That's a lot smaller scale. Like we have like 8 to 12 women in there at any given moment. But it's like, it gets wild, you guys. Like we have everybody get unmuted, we stoke the fire, and then we all start writhing and roaring and grunting and saying, fuck you. And it's just really awesome to let these emotions run wild and give them permission in a safe container to be fully expressed human beings, which they then bring into their, not just relationships. I have a woman right now that's single, and she's using these concepts for dating, and the men that she's dating are like, who are you? You are interesting. And it's just, when you are embodying desire and play, things magnetize to you. And when you are in the role of the controller, the nitpicker, you're going to drive your partner, and in a way, parts of yourself away too. So
definitely parts of yourself and opportunities in life.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be so hard to get what you want. You can be that drama queen that you are.
For excitement.
Yeah.
And want all of the things. I want that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Want all of the things.
You're invited into the
we welcome you into the vortex. Feel free to DM us on Instagram at Anxious Love Coach. We are not on Instagram all the time. So if you DM us, we're getting a lot of them. We're probably not going to respond right away because we're living our lives.
But we care.
But we care, and we will respond. But if you are interested, DM us. And if you are listening to this and you're like, heck yes, price goes up in January, depending on how many people we have in there. So jump on in before it's too late. Enroll in Upward Spiral today, anxiouslovecoach.com. Click work with us and find Upward Spiral in there. And we look forward to seeing you. So that's all I got. And Sheridan, you have anything else?
Nothing. Love you guys.
Love you guys very much. Have a great day. And thanks for being back on the Anxious Love Coach podcast. We look forward to speaking with you very soon. Take care. Bye.